let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I'm S.J. Howell, and I'm emceeing tonight. I'm the director of Catalyst Montana. Woo! And I'm so pleased to be here with all of you. This candidate forum is put on by the Missoula Tenants Union and Catalyst Montana. And, we felt really strongly that local government, it's so important. It's something that really touches our lives. And I'm just going to take a moment of editorial privilege here and say, I don't know if you guys heard that the federal government shut down. And, it feels even more important for us to invest in the government that's really close to our lives, and also to believe in government as a force for good and something that we can all participate in. So again, I want to say thank you all to the candidates for running and believing in that vision, and thank you all to come and participate and learn more and be ready to cast your vote as an informed voter in a few weeks. So let's get down to brass tacks. We have an incredible array of candidates here. We have only 2 short hours to meet them all. And so we are going to ask a bunch of questions and get a bunch of answers in a pretty rapid fire fashion. If you don't hear a question that you want to know the answer to, if you want to talk more to candidates in your ward, you can find their contact information in the gift bag under your chair. That's websites and emails for most candidates. We also have a voter guide questionnaire that everybody participated in. Thank you all for doing that as well. That gives some additional written answers to questions that we asked. There's a QR code on there that goes to our website that has the whole shebang, answers to 5 questions that folks filled out for us. A little bit of quick election housekeeping. So our municipal election is coming right up. It's an all-mail election, so your ballot will be received in the mail. Those are going in the mail on October 16th. So if you don't receive it after, a few days after the 16th, that's a good indication you should bop down to the election center on Russell Street and check in about getting that ballot. If you want to mail it back, you've got to get it in the mail by about the 28th, so it gets there in time, or you can drop it off at the election center on Russell Street anytime up to November 4th. I do want to note an important change to the process. The legislature, in its infinite wisdom, decided that now, instead of putting the date that you are signing your ballot after your signature, you have to put your birth date. This is a change that is taking place starting this general election, so that it was not in place during the primary, but on this upcoming ballot for the first time, you will sign your name and then put your birthday. We're worried about this. It's a bad law. And we want to make sure that there are not ballots that go uncounted because of that change. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Tell your friends and neighbors, sign, and put your birth date. I want to take a moment to thank the amazing folks at ZAC for hosting us and letting us put this event on. Really, really wonderful to work with. I also am so excited to say that this presentation is being recorded by Missoula Community Access Television as part of a media assistance grant donated to us by MCAT. So please also give a big round of applause for the amazing folks at MCAT who made sure the best. Okay, candidates. Here's how the forum will run. We're going to start by going down the line and giving you each 1 minute to introduce yourself. There's a series of microphones somewhere down on the floor, but if folks could find those and pick them up. There's about 1 microphone for every 3 people, so you're going to want to just... After we get through the introductions, we're going to ask each pair of folks running an award a question. You'll get 90 seconds to answer, and then we'll move on to the next pair and ask another question. We have 6 questions. Each question will be asked twice. We used a random number generator at random.org to set the order, so these are really, you guys get to answer the questions that the internet gave you. After those questions, we will take a couple questions from the audience and let every candidate answer those, and then you will get 1 minute to close. We are keeping time right here. If you can see in the front row that when the light shines through the yellow card, that means you have 30 seconds left. And when the light shines through the red card, that means your time is up. And if you're still going at 90 seconds, you might hear this sound, and that really means it's time to wrap it up. Yes?
So I know that like some people in the audience have power sticks. Could we get those instead of the cards? It is sort of difficult to see them with the glare.
All right, can we get a red glow stick? So the green glow stick means 30 seconds left. The red glow stick means your time is up.
We got
We're flexible. We can work with this. I do want to make a couple notes. We are going to be pretty strict that one person gets to speak at a time. So candidates, if you hear something being said that you disagree with, you have to bide your time and wait for your turn to speak or your closing to address it. No interruptions. And if you go on too long, past the 90 seconds, I'm going to get up and walk around and stand behind you, and it's going to be uncomfortable. So let's not do that either. Audience, you have glow sticks. We want to be sure, as a candidate and an elected official myself, I would say it's really important to let this be a little more participatory and engaging. So when you hear something that you like, raise that green glow stick. Give these guys a glow of approval. When you hear something that you don't like, go ahead and raise that red glow stick and let folks know that that's how you're feeling. I do want to note, audience, you also have pieces of paper and pens. I know it's a little dark in there, but hopefully you can get out your glow stick or your phone. Jot down any questions that you have. We're going to be passing a hat around to collect those. We are going to collect those before we're done up here, so start thinking now and get those down. The last thing that I want to say, we had hoped to, in addition to the city council candidates, have the mayoral candidates here with us as well, but unfortunately, Andrea Davis had to cancel due to illness. Sean Knopp is here and is happy to chat with you and answer questions after the fact when we are schmoozing at the end. The last thing that I want to say is if you need bathrooms, they are through that door over here on the side and down the hall. You can see hopefully illuminated there. So with that, I think we're ready to go. Everybody feeling good? Everybody got those glow sticks glowing? Excellent. All right. Word 1. First question. And again, oh, sorry. Not questions. Wait. Let's start with intros. Would you, though, Betsy, please kick us off? 1 minute intros.
Hi, everyone. Is this on?
I'm not getting that one.
Is there a switch?
It was working earlier. I'm not getting it now.
Okay. Try this one to start, and we'll troubleshoot this.
Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Betsy Cross. Thank you all for being here. I am a teacher. I'm a mom. I'm a community volunteer, and I've been a longtime Ward 1 resident. I moved to Missoula about 20-ish years ago for undergrad, and have made Missoula my home. Part of the catalyst for me running for this Ward 1 seat is the divisiveness that has come out of the 2024 elections in our current political atmosphere. And so I'm really excited to be running for this place, this beautiful place that we call home, that has such fantastic resources and outdoor availability. I'm running for our community, for the people who make Missoula what it is, advocating for folks here, and then also for the future, for a place where people can make Missoula their home and afford to stay here and afford to be part of the community here. So that's a little bit about me and why I'm running. Thanks for being here.
I I will say that it can be a bit hard to view government as a force for good when we're currently aiding and abetting a genocide in Gaza. But my name's Lucas Moody. I'm running for Ward 1 as well. I grew up here in Missoula. I had sort of a bit of a front row seat to just the changes that have happened over the time, from my parents being able to both build and pay off a house here in Missoula, to the fact that I've now moved back in with my folks due to the housing crisis and unaffordability. But I do recognize that's given me a privileged position, both with my union job at the public library and just having that financial security of not having to worry about getting evicted, that I can run for city government with that financial security to help hopefully represent the renters in Missoula, who now represent over half of Missoulians. 51 to 54% of Missoulians are renters, yet we only have 2 renters on city council at the moment, and I hope that's something we can change.
Hello everyone, thank you for being here, both in person and online, and thank you for hosting this for all of us. I am Rebecca Dawson. I live in Ward 2. I grew up down the Bitterroot and left after high school, like so many of our kids do, and then came back to raise my family here. I've been back in Ward 2 since 2014, and I am running for a lot of the same reasons as everyone else: affordability in Missoula, with a primary focus on property tax relief for the property owners of Missoula. So thank you so much.
Hello everybody, my name is Justin Ponton, and I'm a first-time Ward 2 candidate. Special shout out, thanks to Catalyst and the Tenants Union for hosting this, thanks to the SAC for hosting this as well. I grew up here in Missoula. I went to Hellgate Elementary, Big Sky High School, went to UM as well. In a pretty humble upbringing though, I grew up kind of on North Reserve there, in the Westview mobile home park there. So after I went to UM, I was really just itching to see something else, kind of broaden the horizon a little bit. So I moved with my wife to New York City, lived there for a few years. I worked for a real estate investment trust and recently moved back in 2021. Today I run a company that specializes in the aggregation of data in the real estate space. We provide that to local real estate professionals in and around Montana, also policymakers and public. And I'm running to represent Ward 2, try to call on some of my experience in the private sector and hopefully affect some positive change along the way. Thank you.
My name is Daniel Carlino. I'm one of the current city council members for Ward 3. And, proud chicken dad, proud cat dad, and along with being on city council, I work with people with developmental disabilities and have been their aide for the past 6 years, going throughout their days with them. I first got into politics through climate activism and environmental activism. As young people and future generations, we're looking at a future that looks very uncertain. We're facing a 6th mass extinction. We're seeing natural disasters come at unprecedented rates, and I just believe in a social movement to get people to help get this thing under control. And on the city council, I try to be a voice for the most vulnerable in our community and a voice for renters, and try to push the envelope to make sure that the government is working for everybody, not just the richest in our society. And I'm hoping to get to do it for another 4 years, and hope to get a lot more passed on there, and try to get this thing under control.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Savage. Also want to say thank you to Catalyst and Tenants Union and the ZAC. Feels like we were just here for the Forward Montana Forum, same place. I have lived in Missoula for almost 25 years. I moved here after graduate school. I've raised 2 daughters here. I've lived on the north side for about 14 or 15 years, and have recently served Ward 1 as a city councilor for the last 3.5 years. I'm interested in continuing to serve on the city council in Ward 3 this time, because I recently moved to Ward 3. And some of the things that I'm interested to keep working on are housing affordability and keeping things affordable for working families.
Thanks to everybody for being here, and thanks for the sponsors. My name is Mike Nugent. I currently represent Ward 4 on City Council. Thanks for the red wave back there. That's cute. I'm a lifelong Missoulian. I think that what makes Missoula special is also what's causing a lot of tension right now. I first ran for council because more than anything, I want my kids to be able to live here and work here if they so choose. I've got 2 kids, a boy in 7th grade and a girl in 2nd grade. And my wife and I own a small business. And we're working every day to kind of try and improve things. I also serve on the health board, the MRA, I chair land use planning, serve on the YMCA board, commissioner of Missoula Youth Football. So I try and give back to the community in a lot of ways that makes it special. And, I think I want to take a moment and say that government only works if competent people step up and run. So whether I agree with you all or not, I want to say I thank you all for running and participating, because I think we can all agree that we have seen places where that's not the case.
Amen. I'm David Portrocci or DQ. Thanks everybody for showing up and putting this on, everyone watching on MCAT. I'm a community organizer here in Missoula by trade or profession in a partnership health center, also with our mighty Missoula Tenants Union and Food Not Bombs, the food justice program here. My philosophy and why I'm running is because I think we can kind of see or judge our town on how we treat our most vulnerable, and right now deeply failing, and that doesn't mean we just cater to people, but we kind of adjust and right the ship to make sure that the most vulnerable of us are being cared for as deeply as anything else, including moneyed interests, real estate interests, in fact more so since those are humans we're talking about. I'm also the vice president at my local, big up to Lucas down there, MFPE Local 8512, and part of the wildfire crew with some of my comrades back there. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, I didn't know you did fire. We should talk about that more. Greetings everybody. Thank you all for being here tonight, and the Catalyst and the Tenants Union. You guys' effort is hugely appreciated and needed within our community. That community building and grassroots effort is the foundation, in my opinion, of many things. My name is Sean Patrick McCoy. I am a local farmer. My family and I run Frank's Little Farm in the River Road neighborhood. I'm running for the Ward 6 2-year seat, and I am a veteran. I am a wildland firefighter. I'm originally from Southeast Idaho, just down the road. If you're from these parts, it's a short drive. And I am current chair of the Missoula Consolidated Planning Board, which I often forget to mention. And I am trying to run for city council and get in politics because I feel like I've spent my entire life in service to my community. And this is an extension of that, and I look forward to talking to you all more later. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I also want to extend my thanks to Catalyst and Missoula Tenants Union, and especially to SJ for hosting this. We worked together on the Urban Camping Working Group a couple of years ago. Feels like a lifetime ago. And thank you for everything that you do for Missoula. So I'm Sandra Basica. I am running for the Ward 2 unexpired term. The reason why I first got into politics, I guess this is my 6th year on council, and when I first got married in 2018, we're coming up on our 7th, where we just had our 7th year wedding anniversary. We have an 8-month-old at home and a 4-year-old at home, and I was really concerned about property taxes. And that was one of the reasons why we're holding off on buying a house. And shocker, we still haven't bought a house today, so we're still renting. And property taxes are a huge reason why rents are increasing every single year. So that's one of my main concerns. That and infrastructure, specifically sidewalks. Because I was concerned about sidewalks before, but then ever since I started having babies, I was really concerned about the ADA accessibility in town.
Hi everybody, my name is Kristen Jordan, and I am currently a Ward 6 City Councilor running for re-election in the 4-year seat. I have a bachelor's degree in environmental biology from the Evergreen State College, and then I went on and got a master's in public administration here at the University of Montana. I'm a data and policy analyst by trade, and I use that background to how I approach local government through facts, accountability, and compassion. I really believe local government's where democracy truly happens. We're 1 degree of separation away from one of you, which means that we can listen directly, see quickly if policies are working, and make changes if they're not. My job as a counselor is to represent you, to make sure that you have a government that hears you and cares. And it's been a steep learning curve, but I've found my footing and I've built strong working relationships. And I'm ready to keep going to do good work for Ward 6 and all of Missoulians. Government should be for the people, by the people, and of the people. And we need to work for you all the time.
Hi everybody, my name is Chris Foster. I'm running for the 4-year seat here in Ward 6 also. I'm a retired electrician. I have life experience as a union member, as a renter, as a homeowner, as a homeless person for a very brief time many years ago. So I understand these things. Up until a couple of years ago, I wasn't really paying much attention to politics. I was enjoying my retirement and checking off my bucket list. And then the homeless situation in this town got my attention. So I'm running because I care and because I have experience with those things. And I'm committed to finding actual solutions to our affordability and homeless and housing problems in this town. So you're not going to hear empty words from me. I've been doing a lot of research for the last couple of years, and I know what other cities have done and jurisdictions have done that have worked in regard to these things, and I think we should do the same. Thanks.
All right, thank you all so much. You're doing great at keeping to time, every single one of you. I'm really proud. Let's get started on these questions. I was so eager earlier. I'm still very eager. So again, these questions were put in random order. What we're going to do is each pair of you, thank you, each pair of you will answer the same question and we'll move on to a next question as we move down the wards. So starting here in Ward 1, what are your top 3 strategies for addressing houselessness in Missoula? And again, 90 seconds, you'll see the glow stick when you have 30 seconds left, the green one, and the red one when you're done.
Thank you. The privilege of being in Ward 1 is alphabetically, you always get to go first. So I think that the safety and dignity of our unhoused population is first and foremost the most important thing to maintain and to encourage. I support housing first strategies, and I support low barrier shelters and services and ways to get people into housing. I think that's really one of the, getting people into housing and keeping people in housing is what we need to do. In the long term, I really support a diverse supply of housing, so different types of housing. Housing that's folks who are working on decommodifying housing is really important. Looking at community land trust, looking at different ways that we can address housing insecurity. Tenant protections are important to me. I've been a renter. I've also experienced housing instability. And so I just really think that having these different collaborations and relationships throughout the city, throughout the county, is really important to not only build relationships among people doing work to serve our unhoused population, but also relationships with people who are living that experience and who deserve the dignity and empathy and respect to work on helping change their situation.
So the no camping ordinance is the reason why I decided to run in the first place. I feel it's an inhumane way to treat people. We're all here together and we need to be showing solidarity. To that end, I think we need to overturn the no camping ordinance, but we need to replace it with affordable housing. We have the temporary safe outdoor shelter program that is a form of halfway house that has had a lot of success. It's currently only 40 units. Which is not enough to meet the demand for it. So that is something, as a successful program, I think needs to be expanded. Additionally, I think we need to expand support for community land trusts like Front Step. Because decommodifying housing is the only way to get it affordable. We've seen it on the speculative market. The market mechanics just keep the demands for more profits keep skyrocketing prices more and more. And finally, I think we need to have a social housing program at the local government level. This would and this would pay for itself because the rents, rather than going to a rent-seeking landlord or a property management company out of state, would in fact be reinvested into the program, would pay for the bond that is would be taken out to buy the property, would pay for maintenance, and would pay for additional social housing units, thus allow us to eliminate the homelessness in Missoula.
Thank you, Ward 1. Ward 2, your question, first question. The City Council's primary power and responsibility is to set and pass a budget. Given the budget shortfall of almost $3.1 million last year, what are 3 must-have budget items for fiscal year 26, and how specifically will you make sure they're funded?
Sorry. I shouldn't have brought notes. I do better without them. I'm busy looking at them. I think that the city needs to look at what our funding responsibilities are. We need to look at safety, public safety, funding our first responders and everything that is enveloped in public safety. We need to look at funding infrastructure. Once those needs are met, then we can take a line-by-line look at the other wants of what we have as a city. We can weigh those out by merit and then make decisions on what we can afford. Unfortunately, to balance the budget, sometimes you have to slow down on what you're spending or eliminate unnecessary costs, and I think that that is something that the city is facing to have a balanced budget.
Yeah, so 3 things I think we need to focus on. Number 1 is developments for increasing the amount and diverse amounts of housing that we have. So that's both market rate, that's affordable housing. I think that needs to remain a huge priority for us from a budgetary perspective. Second, I think, is infrastructure. I think even today, if you walk outside, there's a number of spots, even downtown, Ward 2 for sure, Mullen Road, where we need to take a serious look at changing some of the ways that traffic is moving so that A, it's safer, but B, it's a little bit more efficient. And I think that's only going to get exacerbated once we get the results from the Reserve Street Safety Action Plan back. And then third, I think, is kind of a large umbrella where it's, the essential things. So I think that's, that's fire, that's police, that's EMS, and then that's also programs that, those institutions support, like the HOT team, mobile support. I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of great work that those do. So I think those are the 3 main focuses for me.
Thank you. Ward 2. Ward 3. Recently, we've seen an uptick in ICE enforcement in Montana communities, which has some in our community concerned for the safety and security of community members. How do you plan on protecting vulnerable Missoulians from ICE and other federal agencies?
Yeah, this is really terrifying what we're seeing across the country. I think, people that are immigrants or refugees in Missoula should be protected, and I don't think that the city of Missoula should coordinate with ICE no matter what the federal or state governments are saying. We need to stand up for human rights, and the law, often goes against human rights, and, I'm totally against the city coordinating with ICE in any fashion, and I think we need to protect our neighbors, and I think there a lot of our immigrant community is what makes Missoula like a special place, and I'd like to make sure that they feel welcome here, and make sure that they're treated with dignity and respect. And the way that ICE and National Guard or policing is used against them is completely unjust in my opinion, and I don't want to be a part of it, and I think that I'd be happy to do whatever I can as a city council member to make sure that we're not coordinating with ICE and making sure that people feel safe and protected no matter where they're from.
Thank you. Speaking of Forward Montana, Daniel, I think we got this question at the Forward Montana Forum. So And I will kind of repeat what I said at that forum as well. So I've lived in Missoula for about 25 years, and I have worked in communications jobs most of that time, and I currently am a communications director for Missoula County Public Schools. And the question is, sort of what would I do? What would you do as a person? And I think that in our work at Missoula County Public Schools right now, we have terrified children, we have terrified parents, and we have terrified staff people. And teachers are doing everything they can to protect children. We have not currently had ICE come to a Missoula County Public School, to be clear. But we are very clear that if they do, they are not getting in. And that we will bar the door, we will require a judicial warrant. We are going to do whatever we can do to keep kids safe. And I feel like that is something that I can do, that is my part, that's my role in my professional job. But I think we've all seen the horrific Instagram reels, we've all seen videos, and I think that, yeah, just in my job, that's what I would do.
Thank you. Ward 4. As many of your decisions will revolve around the allocation of funds to public services in the community, how do you think those funds should be used to aid public safety, and what really does public safety mean to you?
One of the biggest challenges of being on city council is that public safety means different things to almost everybody. And we have debated what safety means extensively on the floor because there's connotations to all of that. I think that we need to focus as much as we can on solutions in public safety that avoid jail, that avoid emergency rooms if we don't need it. I've been proud to be supporter of the mobile response team. I helped lead the charge to pass the fire levy to get that fully and permanently funded. And I'm proudly endorsed by the Missoula Firefighters Union, partly for those efforts. I think it's important to focus on things that give people in crisis a choice that isn't emergency room or jail, because neither of those are cost effective for society, and they frankly create outcomes that last far beyond that moment, that really follow people and make it harder for them to do things like get jobs or find apartments. And so we have to do what we can to prevent that. From there, I mean, we need to be a community that takes safety seriously, and that is safety of yes, our unhoused community, and I know and recognize that there's a lot of folks in here who work closely in that area. And that also means, our children. We've got more of a human trafficking issue in this town than people realize. There are larger drug issues, and believe it or not, there is more gang activity than people realize. And we need to make sure that we are not conflating issues that impact people's personal safety with nationalized issues that don't apply.
Just real quick, Sean, I'm not a firefighter. Okay. That's what my intro, I'm not a firefighter. Yeah, I agree with most everyone here. Mental health crisis teams, community care, housing, public health. It means the infrastructure, I think, will go a long way in creating safety. I think the difference between me and Mike is, of course, I support the mobile support team. I work with them at my job. They're currently being used, our code enforcement team, when they go out and sweep encampments, will call on them to counsel them through a sweep. That's not safety for anyone, right? So we need to do both sides of the coin. We can't be criminalizing poverty and then funding these teams that go out and are stretched thin on routes that lead them to just, I've seen this team called with the police just running up on a mom with her unhoused children in a park, and there was no reason for them to be there. The MST was called out. There's no housing to get them into. We need to take full resource, embrace the full resource of these teams and what they were created to do. Their skill set is being wasted, frankly, on the criminalizing element that we are not addressing, that necessitated the need for the MST in the very first place. We got to do all of it. We can't speak out both sides for our mouth on this.
All right. Thank you, Ward 4. Ward 6, Seat 1. What are you offering as a solution for those displaced by the closure of the Johnson Street shelter?
Wow, how fortuitous. I have thought about this question a lot. I got my English degree at the University of Montana ultimately, and I wrestled with this word solution. Because the truth is that I can't offer that community a solution, some hard, fast thing that's going to fix everything. But what I can do is continue to work on the programs that we have found success with and elevate those and hopefully broaden them. What I can also do, and what I believe in strongly, is work within our community to find more grassroots community efforts to lift up and support this community that has such a diverse array of needs. I am adamantly opposed against criminalization of our homeless community for many reasons, besides it being immoral, but it's also the most expensive thing that we can do. And I think one of the last things that I've been trying to flesh out more is I have ideas about how we can address this situation more and how we can serve this community more. And I think one of those solutions is bringing our shelters down to a much smaller size. We don't have large shelters. We have multiple small shelters that we can process folks, identify their needs, and hopefully channel them to different places, which also which also lessens the impact of the struggles that community feels on the neighborhood that is surrounding them. Thank you.
Thank you. It was brought up that Missoula has a large human trafficking problem that a lot of us are not aware of, and a lot of that needs to. It's insane about how intense it is in Missoula because we are on the I-90 corridor, and it is terrifying because I was on the Missoula County Human Trafficking Task Force liaison, and I learned a lot more than I thought that I should ever know. And when I did the Citizens Law Enforcement Academy, I learned a lot of things that are happening in Missoula that you think that only happens in big cities. And I think that a lot of that is happening in the houselessness population, and so we need to really get a grasp onto how to help those folks get out of those situations. I really want to bring a large attention to that because a lot of these folks that are in these situations are not there willingly. And so I just really want to stress that. And one of the main things that I've been going on about for 6 years is that to prevent houselessness is we really need to make sure that rents don't increase out of hand. And with that happening, we need property taxes not to increase out of hand either. So that's one of the main priorities I have. And one of the things that I did lead this past year was to have, it wasn't a 1260, and I know a lot of folks are upset with that. And in that policy, though, was a vehicle permitting program. And in that vehicle permitting program allows you to live in your RV or your vehicle without having to move it every 72 hours. And I think that has been very beneficial to our citizens because that has so far helped over 90 people.
All right, thank you, Ward 6, Seat 1. Ward 6, Seat 2. From housing policy to tax policy, there are likely to be moments where you will have to make decisions with which your constituents, your conscience, and your fellow councilors will be at odds. How will you navigate these choices, and what voices will you rely upon to do so?
Yeah, that happens a lot on city council, and honestly, I think that that's the beauty of city council is to have a bunch of different perspectives that we can discuss so that people can hear their own needs and voices reflected on the council rather than going for a uniform body that votes lock and step. But in times where there has been kind of a conflict, I really do have some clear principles that I work from and try to remain really transparent. My job is to represent Ward 6. That is my job. Of course, I have my own platform and things that are important to me, but I work for the voters and Missoulians as a whole. It means listening and explaining my reasoning clearly and voting in a way that reflects both community values and long-term public good. So representation above all is the most important thing to be about being on city council. Being accessible and accountable so you all can find me and call me and say, why'd you vote for that? Or thank you for voting for that. Transparency. What you see is what you get from me, and I have no hidden agenda. I had a boss once that said he liked working with me because he never had to guess what I was thinking. Fairness and equality, and shared progress. But honestly, I think the thing that really does drive my vote sometimes is advocating for marginalized communities, because we see power on city council, and we see wealth on city council, and we see people who are voting in those circles rather than thinking about what it's like to be broke and you can't afford a $9,000 sidewalk assessment, or you can't afford a $50 fine if you get caught living in a park. So, a lot of things.
I just wrote down some remarks about this. As I see it, the voters are looking for candidates that they can trust to make good decisions on their behalf. Voters know that there's going to be some tough decisions from time to time. So I'll navigate these choices by making every effort to communicate with my fellow councilors, by building up a reserve of goodwill and trust, and by being willing to make strategic compromises when necessary. As an effective city council member, I'll serve the community best when I persuade rather than blame, when I build up rather than demonize, when I use facts rather than ideological talking points, when I seek unity rather than division, and when I work towards actual, attainable solutions that will serve most Missoulians. Local government, in my opinion, and according to our local city charter, is no place for political posturing.
Thank you, Ward 6. All right, we're going to come back down here to Ward 1. We have the same set of questions in a different randomly generated order. And in fact, Ward 1, you are going to start with that same question. I'll read it again. From housing policy to tax policy, there are likely to be moments where you will have to make decisions with which your constituents, your conscience, and your fellow councilors will be at odds. How will you navigate these choices, and what voices will you rely upon to do so?
Thanks. I think with my background as a teacher, I have always prioritized relationships and building shared trust and working across differences to find common ground. And so I really want to lean on those skills as a teacher to build those relationships both on council, with constituents, throughout the community, so that we can find common ground and move forward. Now, I don't think that I'm always going to have the right answers, but I'm willing to work with people to find the best solutions for the people of Missoula. So I think that listening widely, hearing all constituents, being in the neighborhoods, talking with people in the neighborhoods, and centering people with lived experiences based on what the issue at hand is. I think that's really important to me. I also think it's really important to think about whose voice isn't at the table. So whose voice is missing from these conversations, and how can we elevate that and take that into consideration as we're making decisions. I really value transparency and accountability in communication. So like Kristen said, communicating with constituents about why you vote in one way or another, or why you support one thing, and hearing why they would vote yes or no on those things themselves. And then just rooting decisions in equity and thinking about what's best for our community as a whole, and not just a ward or a certain person.
Well, hopefully we don't have to deal with all three of those contradictions at once, but the thing first and foremost is that we are public servants, and just from like my work, from working with the homeless in Ireland to working with the people in Missoula, we are there to serve our constituents. We are there to answer their questions, to help them. And that is first and foremost what we need to address. I think having a conscience and doing what your conscience comes a very close second, because obviously constituents don't always agree, and so having strong moral clarity and knowing when to do the right thing and being able to stand up for the right thing when you don't, when popular opinion may be against you is very important. I think getting on well with the fellow councilors, while it is important to have a working relationship, It's also important not to let like friendships or rivalries get in the way of doing what is right. And because we need to have someone that is willing to speak for the disenfranchised in our community, not just the wealthy elite, not just realtors and landlords and those that are doing fine in this current housing crisis because they benefit from the high prices. And we need someone that will actually take into consideration those that are working like 3 jobs to make $1,700 a rent. And so we need someone to speak for those people.
Thank you, Ward 1. Ward 2, what are you offering as a solution for those displaced by the closure of the Johnson Street shelter?
Yeah, great question. I think, we need to, Johnson Street's closed, we need to look forward at solutions. I think, a few things come to mind. Number one, I think in recent memory, the recent housing sprint this year has been one of the most successful things we've seen in quite some time. I think we need to learn from that. We need to build upon the things that worked well, because that did get dozens of people into permanent stable housing, which I think is probably the best solution we have as far as combating unhoused and that issue. So I think we need to build upon the things that worked well. I think we need to identify the things that maybe are opportunities for us and work on those things going forward. I think we need to continue to invest locally in developments that provide for, again, a myriad of housing, but for sure affordable housing. And then third, I think we need to continue to invest in programs. The homeless outreach team, mobile support, temporary safe outdoor space, coordinated entry system, continue to invest in these programs. Thanks.
So I think that, yes, the housing sprint was successful, and we need to continue to look at how we can make that more successful in the future. I think what Sandy brought up about the permits to be able to live in your RV or your car and not be displaced every 2 or 3 days is also a good step in the right direction. Neither of those are perfect, but we're working, we're trying. If we had a solution, we wouldn't have a houseless problem in Missoula. So the solution is very elusive right now, and it's going to take all of us working together. I think that we are going to be calling on private and faith-based industries to help support that population while we work together toward a solution. Unfortunately, it's not going to be easy, and it is going to take a lot of different voices and a lot of research to see what's working around the world so that we can implement those positive policies here.
Thank you, Ward 2. Audience, this is a quick reminder that if you have a question you want to hear asked that you haven't heard discussed, now is the time to write that down on your slip of paper. We are going to send the hat around in just a couple minutes so we can get those questions together. I see a bunch of glow sticks at the back, but I don't know what that means. I think it means... if you need a pen or paper, the folks in the back will help you. That's what I can offer. Back to our questions. Word 3. Thank you for your patience. As many of your decisions will revolve around the allocation of funds to public services in the community, how do you think those funds should be used to aid public safety, and what does public safety mean to you?
Yeah, public safety, I think, is one of the most important things to have in a community where we can all feel safe no matter who you are or what age you are. And I think there's a whole bunch of different aspects. One thing I worked on in City Council was I wrote the Vision Zero transportation safety policy for the city, where we're just going with the safer street design rather than the faster street design to make sure that people can get from A to B safely, and it's competing interests with making cars go faster. I think safety to me looks like everybody having a roof over their head and access to clean water and clean food. And I think there's a lot more we need to do as a city council to guarantee those things. And when it comes to emergency response teams, we absolutely should not be hiring private security companies to patrol the streets, acting like fake police officers, like we have been doing the last few years. And the answer to every emergency response isn't a one-size-fits-all with policing or with security. We need specialized teams like the mobile support team. We need to make that 24/7. We need to get more resources to the homeless outreach team. We need to be creative, but not every emergency situation requires somebody with arrest authority and a gun and a badge. We can get specialized expertise in different teams in the future and make sure that everybody can feel safe and have the proper emergency response team for the crisis that they're in. So I'd like to see other emergency response teams expanded as well.
Thank you. Public safety to me means that, residents in our community are free to be themselves, that they can express who they are, and that they're safe living their own lives. It means for me that my queer kid can walk down the street and not feel harassed and feel safe in her own community. That is hugely important to me. It's also important to me that our house community feels like they are safe and have dignity, and that they can be supported by the people who are providing services to them throughout the community. It also does, though, mean traditional public safety in terms of fire and police, but it also means continuing to fund things like the HOT team, as Mr. Carlino mentioned, the mobile support team. I think that those things have been critical and crucial as we have moved through the COVID pandemic and as we've moved through sort of the last few years of just kind of working with different people in Missoula. So I think it takes all of those things and all of those things for all of us to feel safe.
Thank you, Ward 3. Ward 4, what are your top 3 strategies for addressing houselessness in Missoula?
We need to stop criminalizing people for being poor. That's the number one thing. No matter how you cut it, you do outreach to one person surviving outside, you figure out real quick it's a lot different than the public narrative. Building and funding public and non-market housing. We can get a variety of housing, but those investors and speculators are going to snatch it right up, right, and rent it back to us for way overpriced. So we need to focus on that low to no income bracket that's getting screwed continually, right? And we need to enact tenant protections. That comes straight out of the people who are evicted out of our shelter. Right now we've got a campaign called Tenants' Right to Counsel. So that ensures that everybody who has... Sounds like player 2 has entered all the people, not everyone, but a lot of the people who were housed during the sprint are already out of that housing. So there needs to be protections for them. There needs to be protections for the rest of us renters to make sure that we've got equal standing if we end up in court with a predatory landlord. So getting people off the street is the first part of this. The second is keeping people in it, and it means not putting them subject to the forces that will only serve to profit, that only want to make a profit on this. So we need to stop criminalizing people. We actually need that housing that people can afford on their vouchers, right? Because they go out there and it's like a Shark Tank, right? So they need to be able to get into the housing that everyone's telling them to get into and then protect them when they get inside.
3 priorities are housing, housing, housing. We need housing across the spectrum. I have spent my career working on those issues. Before I was on council, I was on the Missoula Housing Authority. So I'm very familiar with Section 8 and the fight to actually get people who are providing Section 8 housing reimbursed at a level that makes those competitive. That's a constant battle of the Missoula Housing Authority. In the last 4 years, I've been part of the 2 biggest permanently affordable housing projects in the history of Missoula. 1 rental, 1 home ownership. The Villaggio apartments at Dennis Scott Street it's the largest permanently affordable housing project in the state, and it is making a difference. And those are beautiful. They are not bad apartments at all. They are a place people can be proud to live. Additionally, the Rivaro project is the largest community land trust housing project in Montana's history, creating real home ownership opportunities. So there's this whole narrative that Missoula isn't doing anything. Missoula is doing more than any community in the West. Is it enough? It's never going to be enough, but we have to keep pushing forward. We have to make sure that we're creating opportunities for people to afford things. At the same time, there is a whole slew of Missoulians who will never qualify for any subsidy, but can't afford to live here. You all know them. They're teachers, they're firefighters, they're nurses, and we can't ignore strategies to try and make sure that those people who will never qualify for a subsidy can afford housing. And that's where supply becomes a real issue, and our code reform is going to make a difference.
Thank you. Ward 4. Ward 6, seat 1. Recently, we've seen an uptick in ICE enforcement in Montana communities, which has some in our community concerned for the safety and security of other community members. How do you plan on protecting vulnerable Missoulians from ICE and other federal agencies?
Everybody absolutely 100% needs to know their rights. When I do not accept anything without a warrant, as much as I do like public safety, which does include the police department, they're not coming into my house without a warrant. When I was pregnant and I couldn't move, I took up cross stitching. The first thing I cross stitched was this pretty flowery border that said "Come back with a warrant," and it's right on the front of my front door. So you absolutely have to know your rights, and everybody is entitled to due process. When everybody is, when it is unknown if you are a citizen or not, the one that you should go to first is to assume that they are a citizen and actually give due process, because this is America and we do have rights here. And then if it is found out that you are not a proper citizen in the United States, then we can handle it from there. But we should not do just willy-nilly deportations like that. I speak to a healthy class every year. Ever since I started on council 6 years ago, I speak to, I can't remember if it's not the government class, but it's one of them. And I hand out constitutions to them every single year, and only like 5 or 10 of the class of 30 comes and grabs them. You have to read the Constitution and at least try to understand it. And I know that a lot of folks don't have access to one. Hit me up. I'll be able to hook you up with one. I was on the Property Tax Task Force last year, and I went to Helena all the time, and I got a lot of constitutions from that. Thank you.
Nice. I feel like we're getting the juicy questions. So I do not believe that we should coordinate with ICE or federal agency in deportation through our police department or any of our other institutions. In my experience, one of the most important things that we can do, as Sandra said, is educate, communicate, make sure people know their rights. But another really crucial piece of this is engaging with that community to know what they need, what they want. It can't be underestimated that sometimes in our good intentions, we make bad choices, which is why it's very, very important to communicate with this community, see what their needs are, and then help inform them as well as create plans for responses. This is a grassroots effort as well, but plans that we can put in place so that folks know what to do if somebody comes to their door, or that they can call for support. Those are some of the most important fundamental things that we can do for that community on that level. As we raise up in our community, we can begin to broaden out, we can look at other direct action steps that we can take. But for me, the most crucial piece of this question is making sure that we're engaged with that community to identify their needs first and what they want and how they feel like they should be protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Ward 6. Ward 6, Seat 2, last question from us. The City Council's primary power and responsibility is to set and pass a budget. Given the budget shortfall of almost $3.1 million last year, what are 3 must-have budget items for fiscal year 26, and how specifically will you make sure they're funded?
3 must-haves are going to be police, fire, and public works. That's, according to our city charter, that's the first thing mentioned as far as the duties of the city council, is to take care of the health, welfare, and health and welfare of the citizens. So that's the first thing that I would fund on the budget. Our budget is relatively lean, so there's not a lot to cut there. So those are not discretionary, those 3 things. Everything else would be discretionary. I think if we're going to start talking about funding things in the future, like affordable housing and helping with the homeless and shelters and stuff like that. I really think it's a fool's errand to look for that in the budget. I think that we should look at things like bonding, and if we're going to do things like bonding, then we need to not alienate the banking community in this town, because the bankers are the ones that syndicate the bonds and buy that, and they take on the risk. So we need the banks as partners to fund things like affordable housing and shelters going forward.
I think that the priorities of the budget should be decided by the folks that vote. I believe, have my own platform here on top of that, and it starts with housing and stability. We need to beef up the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We need to use it for deep affordability for folks at 0 to 30% AMI. We need a full spectrum sheltering options, which we've talked about a lot, with no barrier or winter shelter, or expand PSOS, have authorized outdoor campsites. Multiple options for our unhoused folks. We can find the money in the general fund, I believe, to do that. We need to support a tenant's right to counsel. We need a dedicated line item in our budget using Affordable Housing Tax Fund, Affordable Housing Trust Fund money to do that. I just want to say really quickly, I'm encouraged by the incentives that the one we have coming from the Averill hospitality folks who are building the Riverfront Triangle beside what you think about the Triangle. They have committed to donating 1% of their income for 10 years to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is going to be $300,000. So they're going to make a ton of money on that thing. But that is a creative way to beef up our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Second thing, infrastructure, climate, and community well-being, and I'm going to have to go quickly. Green infrastructure and climate resilience. I really believe in green infrastructure to address climate change. We need transportation equality. We need to reassess our community, our construction, our CIP list, which I'm forgetting the name of right now, but it's basically how we prioritize, capital improvement fund, prioritizing, seriously? Last one is accountability and fairness. Okay.
All right, thank you all so much for answering those questions. I want to say you all did a great job of respecting one another's time and giving the audience some real food for thought. What we are going to do now is take 2 audience questions. You are each going to get a chance to answer them, but this time you'll answer them in just 1 minute. So it's like a lightning round of equally important questions. When we get done with those 2 questions, we'll give you all a minute for closing, and then the lights will come up, and you can go have good conversations with the folks in the audience. So we're going to start down here.
With Ward 6. We're always in.
You know what? We'll start down there. I hear you. Ward 6, seat 2. You can start us off. Again, 1 minute. 3 big financial pressures: property taxes, housing, and child care. We've talked about the first 2. What would you like to see the city do to stabilize child care and help people pay for it?
My goodness, if we have a developer that signs a contract that says they're going to put an affordable housing, an affordable childcare space in their development, then we need to hold them to it. We just let a developer out of doing that because it didn't meet their bottom line. So I think something we can do as a city is write incentives into projects that are funded by the MRA. Projects that are funded by the MRA, those are our tax dollars. They need to be used for affordability. Bottom line, no more funding big corporations without some sort of an affordability requirement. If we have an incentive or a requirement in a development contract that requires affordability, then we need to hold the developers to it. We had a very disappointing vote recently where we let the developer out of the child care obligation. That haunts me to this day. That developer is not going to go to sleep hungry or overworked or not having somebody look after their child care or their children. So talking to my next door neighbor who runs one of the only licensed child care centers in town, I think I'm almost done, she said we just need to make it more accessible somehow. Funding.
So in anticipation of these situations, I've created a blog on my website, chrisfostermissoula.com, and I go into more detail about this stuff. My next door neighbors have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they tell me they have 2 mortgages, one for the house and one for the babysitter. It's just not sustainable, it's not acceptable. I think that if we're going to build affordable housing, and the city gets involved in it, then the city could take what would normally be the developer's fees, the investor's fees in the markets, which is typically 20% of a project, and take that money and put it to funding child care. Also funding down payment assistance, first-time home buyer, permanently affordable stuff. That's where the money's got to come from. I think we share a lot of the same values up here. The question is always going to be, how do we pay for it? And that's what I'm focusing on.
I apologize. Could you repeat the question? I missed part of it.
I can. 3 big financial pressures: property taxes, housing, and childcare. We've talked about the first 2. What would you like to see the city do to stabilize childcare and help people pay for it?
Great, thank you. So I'll try my best not to echo too much, but you know, both of what Kristen and Chris got at are really important factors. I think we can hold developers' feet to the fire, get them to invest in this more, shine out the need, and then I also believe that we can do more to encourage daycares and child care centers throughout the town, and as well as trying to work and reach out to the private sector, right? And encourage them that this is a need that they help invest in, right? Funding is always a challenge, and this is going to be something where we need private and public dollars to help really make some inroads to increasing our child care availability. I personally do not understand how other parents do it. I'm the stay-at-home parent, and we would have never been able to make it work if one of us didn't stay home. So I think we need to be looking for every tool in the toolbox to support parents.
Thank you very much for this question. As somebody with an 8-month-old and a 4-year-old, this really much hit home because, as I mentioned earlier, we are renters, and I did when I was working at a periodontist office before I had my baby Ava, and when she was born, we couldn't afford full-time childcare, so I had to quit that job because my husband is the breadwinner, and it wouldn't make sense for him to stay home with the kids. So one of the main things that I've noticed when looking for childcare for my children is the regulations are very strict. So yes, I would like my children to learn some stuff at daycare, but sometimes I just need them to keep them alive because I need to go to work. I need to do stuff. I have doctor's appointments, go to city council, committee meetings, stuff like that. And a lot of the regulations require that there's so much red tape, so many regulations regarding that. And I think that we really do need to take a look at that. And one thing that I didn't mention in one of my previous answers that I did not want to forget is that regarding the ICE question is you also need a warrant to search your car, so be sure to ask for that.
You mind repeating the last part of that real quick?
Yeah, what would you like to see the city do to stabilize childcare and help people pay for it?
Thanks. I think we need to see childcare as basic infrastructure in this town. I mean, worldwide, but since we're talking about Missoula, we need to see it as basic infrastructure. With, I guess, everybody so far, the Rivara project was a blunder, and I know it's more complicated. And I know it was really difficult to get that, but what it does is it erodes public trust. When you put it to a public vote and the Northside residents tell you that this is part of the deal, it's part of the deal, right? So we can talk ourselves out of doing anything because it's just too difficult and we don't understand. Well, we got to unravel this stuff and help people understand what government is actually dealing with and figure a way out of it. Right now, we learned in the last 2 years, the #1 evicted class, single mothers. We also know mothers leading a one-parent household with kids is the leading homeless class in the last 2 years. This is incumbent on us to figure it out and not make excuses.
Childcare is a huge issue. Before my daughter started kindergarten a couple years ago, we were spending $16,000 a year on childcare and preschool. It's ridiculous. The problem with being on council is that sometimes you have to make tough decisions and things have to work out. There's a lot of people up here talking about Rivara and how just make the developer do it. Well, the truth about Rivara is The private part of that project is paying for the permanently affordable housing and the subsidies to keep those permanently affordable housing options real. And if they couldn't get the loan, which they could not get the federally backed loan from the banks to build the project, it canceled the housing part of it as well. So they could not find a tenant who would lease the whole thing. I met with some of the people in this room who might not wave their green flags, but we talked about solving this problem. And we actually found solutions that might not work in Rivara, but will work if we take them and approach them where the city owns the building but can control the rent and therefore subsidize the rent for the child care providers to be there. The Missoula Child Care Advantage that we helped start with United Way is actually making a difference. And I could go on and on this topic, but details actually matter in local government.
Yes, so I agree with a lot of things that people have already said, but I will say that no one is working harder than the stay-at-home parent. I was that parent. I was in Sandy's exact boat, where I had 2 young children, and I did quit my job because it was just more affordable for me to stay home. And so I did that for 3 years. I think the only other person who might work that hard is the working parent who's trying to pick their kid up at 3 because school gets out at 3 and they don't get off till 5. So I would like to say that one thing I think the city can do is to continue to support and develop and do everything they can to help Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec is one of the biggest child care providers in Missoula, and they're really critical for that after school and summer care. The other thing I would do is exactly what started to happen when the Rivera project started to unravel with child care, which is what Mr. Nugent did, frankly, which was bring partners together, bring everybody to the table, and let's figure this out. You know, I know that there are people in here who have spent their entire careers working on child care, and they know way more about this than anybody else, and so let's talk to them about what the solutions are.
Yeah, I think this is a huge issue for pretty much every family in Missoula, and Parks and Rec is, I believe, the biggest child care provider in Missoula, and each year I've been on city council, we've increased the rates every year, and I've voted against those each time while the majority of city council votes for it. We need to make sure that people can have affordable access to child care, and we need to not rely on the private sector. We need to have more public investments in this. And recently, we had the Rivera project where the developer and the city came to an agreement that they were going to build a 3,000 square foot child care facility, and they were going to subsidize it for at least a couple of years. And then when the city staff brought back to city council, we need to get rid of that. And I vote against that. I think that we need to hold the developers accountable, and they already agreed to do child care, and they already went back on some of the affordable units in that project. We need to use our leverage. They were not going to pull out of the project. They've got a ton of market rate units, and they can afford to do the affordable child care.
Yeah, thanks. I think this is a great question. I love the way it was phrased with the 3 pillars. I'm constantly reminded and constantly staggered at the absolutely astronomical cost of childcare, and I think at a local level, we most definitely need to continue to explore incorporating that into these developments that we look at. And I think it's also just a great mixed-use type of example when you look at these developments. And since the question, just the way it was referenced in terms of overall cost, I also don't think we can lose sight of the other 2 pillars in terms of just the property tax burden and also the overall cost of housing. But specifically to child care, I think we need to continue to invest in those public-private partnerships just to make it more accessible and bring down the costs.
I love this question because I have a really great answer. I want to echo what Sandy said about the overregulation. Yes, we want our children safe. We want them in a positive, healthy environment. However, that can be achieved without basically kneecapping the provider on how much it costs to meet all of those requirements. So I definitely think we need to look at that. I love the idea of having investors and builders and developers incorporate that into the new developments within our communities. That's great. But my favorite answer is the one that I actually proposed a few years ago. We need to lean on our public schools. We have Health Science Academy, we have all these IB, we have all these different programs in our high schools, but we have a lot of aspiring teachers. Why aren't we bringing the daycares to the school and teaching those kids how to be child care providers? Why aren't we fostering their desires for their future and helping them to be healthy role models and bring up the healthy next generation.
I think it's actually pretty hard to extract childcare from the other two issues. It's pretty hard to afford childcare when the majority of your income is going to pay rent. And that's why I think that and the Rivara project is a perfect example of that, because it's like the private sector is not going to provide this necessity. It is never going to be profitable enough for them to invest in that, which is why we need to focus on public housing, get affordable rent for local Missoulians that is capped at 30% of your income. And that way people will be actually able to afford to live and work in Missoula.
I wish I could have gone first for this question. There's so many thoughts. I'm a mom to a 4-year-old. We are deep in the childcare situation right now. I will say that I think we need to talk to childcare providers and learn about what their needs are, what they can afford. They're operating on such thin margins. They can't afford to keep staff. Childcare for 0 to 5 is one of the most critical times for brain development for kids. We need kids to be in safe, healthy learning environments. We need funding and support for these things at all levels. I think that we have a lot of ways to work with the state on this. I think that there's different ways that we can provide subsidies for folks who are experiencing trouble paying for childcare. People who work in childcare need to be able to afford childcare. They need to be able to pay for their kid or have their kid with them at these childcare facilities. I think that we are so lucky in Missoula to have Parks and Rec who provides childcare on the days that public school isn't working, on holidays, over the summer. They've expanded their programs, and thank God we have them.
All right, thanks everyone for the first audience question. We're going to go ahead and start back down here with Ward 6, Seat 2 for the second and final audience question. Are you committed to fighting for tenants' right to counsel through finding government funding for it?
Yes, I'm committed to tenants' right to counsel. And once again, we're talking about funding something. In this case, the lawyers and the legal help for people. And so we have a growing list of things that we need to fund in this city, and they're all legitimate needs. They're not wants. They're things that make this city a good place to live, a great place to live. And so the question is going to always be, how do we pay for this? I've been knocking on doors. There's people that are up to their eyebrows in property taxes, can't afford more property taxes. So we have to think out of the box for this sort of thing. So Montgomery County, Maryland, passed a $100 million bond. They paid it back, so it wasn't a permanent tax, and they used that money, in their case, to build permanently affordable housing for their citizens. And I think Missoula should look at something like that down the road to fund all these things that we have on our list.
Sorry, can you rephrase
I can repeat the question, I can, yes. Are you committed to fighting for tenants' right to counsel through finding government funding for it?
Yeah, so it's the government funding piece that I absolutely support a tenant's right to counsel, and I absolutely think that the government should be a part of making that happen. When we talk about addressing houselessness and housing affordability, a tenant's right to counsel is right in there with all of the other solutions that we need to speak to make sure that people can find a home and keep their home. I think after living in Australia for a really long time, where they do have a lot of socialized programs, coming back to America and seeing how disenfranchised people are with the government, and starting to believe that the government isn't here to be a service provider and that we need to start getting our private nonprofits to fill in the gap. It's not what government's for. Government is to take your taxes to make sure that you have a happy, peaceful enjoyment and your human rights met. So absolutely agree to finding funding in our local Affordable Housing Trust Fund to support tenants' right to counsel.
So
So back before I even thought about learning or wanting to run on city council, I took the Citizens Law Academy. Apparently I just love school so much that I just keep signing up for all these classes. And I learned that the landlord-tenant relationship and law fair regarding it is, Montana is a lot more tenant-friendly than I originally anticipated. And with that being said, yes, I do agree with the tenants' right to counsel. My concern, though, is the, I guess I'm thinking out loud here, is the taxpayers paying for it. It's coming out of the general fund. It's very, we don't have a lot of money in the general fund, but every dollar that is paid for when the city sells land, every dollar of that profit goes into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So I'm wondering if we can use part of that to help pay for a tenant's right to counsel with that. Just because the general fund is so small and it has to pay for so many things, and I provide so many amendments every single year to try to cut down that budget, so I just have to stick to that precedent.
So yes, absolutely, I support tenants' right to counsel wholeheartedly, as well as to finding and identifying places where government can help support that. But funding is the crucial question here behind this effort. And personally, in my experience, strategically speaking, I do not think the tenants union should rely solely on government funding. I think it is much smarter to diversify that funding in as many ways as possible. So yes, I would absolutely commit to working towards finding government funding for that, but also helping to look for whatever private funding, grants. I know it's hard these days to imagine there being grants with the federal government and state shrinking away from all responsibilities, but to me, it's very important for that to be a stable option and thing available for tenants. It's got to have a diversified funding source so that it doesn't just disappear on people.
Thanks. I was asked this 2 years ago during the mayor's race, and I definitely support the idea of tenant right to counsel. I think that the best housing that people have is the housing they're in at that moment, and whenever possible, we should do what we can. I think that rather than that person being any sort of government employee, we should look to maybe granting to an organization who can better use that money to fight that fight. And the reason I say that is because the state legislature keeps taking away powers from local government when we do progressive, bold things. And Representative Howell, I know you could speak to that a little bit. And there already is a restriction of power in state law where local governments can't interfere with private contracts, and I wouldn't buy that that's interference with private contracts, but I do think if that person was a public employee, we would see the state legislature attack it almost immediately. But if we could partner with a private group to help fund that, I think we could make a difference.
Yes, I support a tenant's right to counsel wholeheartedly. Part of why I'm running is because the ask we've made to local government, our county commissioners, our mayor, there's this hesitation, and we need them to say yes. Well, let's figure it out, rather than let's figure it out, maybe yes. Let's see, off the top of my head, I know 2 programs right now that deal with housing that are don't have a housing element to them at all. The $1 million we spend in code enforcement to criminalize people for homelessness, that results in $50 fines just for being poor in public space. That's for you, Cam Bob. And then the $800,000 we just poured into the dumpster, hiring private security to police poor people. Yeah. Throw that money towards tenant right to counsel. People stay in their homes. You don't see people sleeping in your parks anymore.
Yes, I do support tenants' right to counsel, and I wanted to say thank you to the Tenants Union for providing, you guys gave us a great informational packet on City Council. I read the whole thing, and I do support government funding for it, but I think we're going to have to find it. And so to your point, David, it's like, okay, yes, now let's figure it out, but there is some figuring it out to do. And I think a public-private partnership is actually something that is, I agree, it's a little bit more stable funding to do that. And I don't exactly know where that money comes from, but I do support it.
Yeah, I'd like to live in a Missoula where tenants don't have to worry about where they're going to be next month, and we all know that we've got a stable place to live. And we absolutely need to fund a tenant's right to counsel to get there. You know, too many of my friends and family have, have to face like the uncertainty of where they're going to live next month when the landlord decides to turn their home into an Airbnb or to sell it or to raise the rent on them. And we need tenants protections, and I think a free legal counsel would go a really long way. And I absolutely support the city and county government funding this. You know, I think grants and private partnerships sounds good, but at the end of the day, those grants are going to get taken away, and then we're going to lose that program in the future. So I think we need government funding to get this into the budget so that we can continue having it year after year without the uncertainty of it going away.
So, yes, I do support.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It doesn't matter. I can go. All right, I'll go. Yes, I'm supportive to finding ways to fund tenants having a right to counsel. In preparation for this forum, I just kind of got introduced to a little bit more about this fight that the tenants union is taking on. I think it's very interesting. I think just kind of in summation, going forward, very much looking forward to increased dialogue here. It seems like the tenants union has some really good ideas, and in short, yes, supportive, and yes, looking forward to more dialogue because I think it's a very interesting topic and a very worthwhile thing.
Now I yes, I do support tenants' right to counsel. However, I do not support taxpayer funding it. And yes, get your red sticks available. Shake them. I get it. Taxpayer funded is increased stress on the taxpayers, on the property owners. And every time your property taxes go up, your rent goes up, which makes your risk of eviction higher. So I do think that, yes, it is a wonderful program, and we do need to figure out how to do it, but I don't think burdening the property tax system and burdening the general fund is the appropriate way to fund it.
With 95% of landlords able to afford counsel and only 5% of tenants being able to afford counsel, this is a clear power imbalance. And so while I do support the tenants' right to counsel, I ultimately would want to see this sort of power dynamic eliminated. And I think this is perfect for social housing because that it is you're transferring it from the for-profit model to a resident-owned community, and the residents are then basically their own landlords. They are not subject to eviction, and they are paying their rents to maintain the maintenance, pay off the bond that was used to afford that, and build more social housing for their neighbors, so that more people can get out of that power dynamic.
Yes, I absolutely support tenants' right to counsel, and I'm really encouraged by the work that the tenants union is doing on this, and I really appreciate the responsiveness that the tenants union has for the questions that I've had about funding and where in the budget they see that funding coming from, potential different places, and their flexibility in trying to make it work no matter what. So with no matter what level of funding that is and where that funding is coming from, saying, yes, we can make it happen. I think that that's really important, and I really appreciate that communication and that partnership, and I really hope to continue working with that partnership and having that communication in the future. I think that making sure that people have stability and can expect, they know what to expect is coming their way from month to month is really important, and that's important for all the reasons that we've mentioned that makes people's lives here in Missoula ones that they can afford and that they can find stability in and that they can find a good quality of life here in Missoula.
Thank you all, candidates. You have made it through our questions. We are going to give you all a minute for a closing statement. We're going to go back down here and start with Ward 1, shaking it up again, I know. Keep your eye on that timekeeper, and we'll go ahead and start with your 1 minute closing.
I just really appreciate you all being here, and I want you to know that I am really open to conversation after this or at any time. If you want to go for a walk or chat or talk on the phone or email, I'm really open and available to that. It's really hard to navigate these conversations in a minute or a minute and a half because there's so much nuance and there's so much complexity, and they really require conversation and collaboration. So I find it really difficult to just talk at a room of people. I do appreciate the feedback of the glow sticks, but I really love having the conversation where we can approach that nuance and complexity, and we can find, get into the nitty gritty and get to know one another, form relationships, and use those relationships in the future to make Missoula a place that we can all afford to be and that we can all be proud of saying that we're Missoulians. So I really appreciate your time, and I'm really grateful for all of your efforts in being politically informed and being here.
Thanks to you all for coming out tonight. Special thanks to MCAT, who is doing a new MQuest program that if you folks are into D&D, you should check out. I just want everyone to know that, especially for the working class Missoulians, those that are struggling to make rent, those that are really under the gun financially, that I'm as someone that's one of you, I will be a voice for you on council. I will do my best to secure affordable housing through social housing programs that are self-funding through the rents once we take away the profit motive from this predatory system, that it just keeps inflating the prices beyond what Missoulians are able to afford. Because we have the affordable housing is based off of both remote work and local work, and we need to be affordable for people that are living and working locally.
So thank you all again for participating in this. It is very nice to see so many people so interested in what's happening in their local government. I would also like to say it is really hard to address everything in 30, 60, 90 seconds, so I would love to have further conversations and discuss this with you. Of course, I already know what I think, so I don't need to talk anymore. I want to hear what you have to say. I'm 2 ears, 1 mouth, so twice the listening ability. Again, thank you all so much, and I look forward to visiting with you again.
Yeah, I want to echo some of these same sentiments. Thank you all for being here. This is really important. As I was driving over here, I don't know why, but I was thinking about a time when I was riding the bus from Hellgate Elementary, and I remember driving by the Pleasant View sign, and it said, phase 1 starting, homes available at, $119,000 or something like that. And I just got to thinking, it's remarkable how far we've come in just that amount of time. So, I want to focus on the things that impact us the most, and myself included, and my neighbors in Ward 2, and it's the cost of living, and that is the cost of housing, the cost of taxes, childcare, kid agrees, insurance, all the above, addressing and finding sustainable solutions for the unhoused members of our community, focusing on infrastructure, and I too think it's difficult to sort this out in 60 seconds or 90 seconds, so please feel free to contact me. I'd love to connect with you. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for coming out to the forum. I'm really proud to be a member of our community. We're not just anywhere USA, we're Missoula, and it's a really special place, and I'd like to keep it that way. Before I was on city council, I, thought that the city council members were deciding where our property taxes went, deciding local policy, and then when I got on there, I realized almost all of it is decided by city staff, and then we kind of have a rubber stamp from city council, unfortunately. When there's a vote to open a shelter, we get yes. If there's a vote with a recommendation to close the shelter, also yes. If there's a vote to preserve our open space, and that's what's recommended, it's a yes. If there's a vote to develop that open space, it's also a yes. If there was a vote recommendation to refill Glacial Lake Missoula, I would be worried. And frankly, I'm not there to be a rubber stamp. I'm there to work for you all and do what the community wants. We've got a lot of issues, and we need somebody on city council who's willing to put policies forward to fight for affordable housing, fight for our unhoused neighbors, and fight for a livable climate and livable future.
So when my kids were in preschool, at the end of every day, they would sit in a circle and they would talk about what their favorite part of the day was. And toward the end of the circle, every kid was saying the same thing. So I'm going to try not to do that here. But it was always, number one, I'm glad we got to go out to the playground. And number two, I'm really glad that my mom's going to pick me up. So, but I do really appreciate this and thank you all for being here. Thank you all for participating in the public process. When I ran for city council in 2021, the main reason I did it was to stand up for my neighborhood. I felt like the north side was getting the shaft, frankly, and we were not getting the infrastructure to be able to support all of the housing that was coming our way. And my main goal was to bring voices to the table that wouldn't otherwise be there. And that's still why I'm here. That's still why I'm continuing to run. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks to everyone again. I appreciate you all. Even if you wave the red stick, I'm down to work for you as well. That's not really how it works, right? We're all in this together. Running for the single moms, running for the people who want the sidewalks fixed, running for the people on fixed incomes, the seniors getting priced out through the property tax. That takes a circuitous route through all the corporate investment and corporate welfare that they don't understand. Why the basic infrastructure is not being met in this town. I'm running for the people who get too poor to afford housing. I'm running for the people who are criminalized for being too poor. I'm running for you all, and I'm here to find solutions. If we could just get a little thing to press yes over and over again because we got to make these difficult decisions that don't feel good, what do we need any of us for? We need voices to emerge and rupture this thing because it is on cruise control. So let's change it. I'm running for all of you, and we're going to change it.
The thing about local government is details matter. It's what makes it different from all other levels of government. And, you know, there's so much more to being on city council than just submitting policy. You actually have to figure out how that policy is going to work, and you have to figure out the details to make it implementable. You know, there's a lot of talk about the Rivara and how we should just make the developers do childcare, and that's great, but that's a talking point. How are we going to do it? And the thing about that project is when the mayor sent it back to council, to committee, and said, let's try and take another look, I made the developer come sit down with a group of people and look at his budget and figure out how we can make it work. I brought the Missoula Child Care Advantage to the table. I brought Parks and Rec to the table. And I said, what are some possibilities? And the reality is that the partners in the community all agreed this one isn't going to work, but we came up with other ideas that we can potentially implement in the future. And if you go back and watch the committee hearing where that was then voted down, the people who are up here bragging about saying we're just going to make developers do it didn't offer any solutions, and they didn't do a damn thing to try and make that happen. And that's what government actually takes. It needs workers.
Okay, so I'm going to take my final minute to just start with something that's near and dear to my heart that hasn't come up at this particular forum, but that's agriculture and local agriculture. As the only farmer up here and possibly the only farmer, you know, like working within the city, like local level, I will be an absolute advocate for local food and local agriculture and making sure that we are trying to do as much for that as we are for all of these other issues, because they are all linked together. If we don't have good food, we also just don't have healthy people. So just want to throw that piece out there because that is near and dear to my heart. I also want to thank all of you for being here and for your time, and also to encourage you to continue to be as involved as you can, considering all of our busy lives, and to reach out to your neighbors and family, to build bridges, to help ruin the idea that we're divided, because we're not that divided.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to echo that. One of the things that I'm really proud of in my past 6 years is being able to build a rapport with everybody that I work with. Even the people that we're running against, Sean and I, our kids are good friends. You know, I go to his farm all the time, and Kristen and I, we disagree on a lot of things, but we come together when it comes to safety and infrastructure in our neighborhood. And I've actually co-sponsored things with almost everybody on council in the past 6 years. Even with people that we fundamentally disagree with, we find common ground. And so I do want to point out my website, sandravasiga.com. It has all my contact information. And I want to spend the rest of the time introducing something that I'm very happy to talk about on October 8th. Is public comment got moved to the end of city council meetings, and that's been very frustrating for a lot of folks. And so what I'm proposing with a couple of co-sponsors is to have two separate public comment periods, one at the beginning of meetings for 20 minutes, and then we'll go on to regular business and then have the regular public comment period at the end, just so that we have at least some public comment at the beginning. And please come to the council meeting if you want to talk about that.
That must be Bob Campbell. Yeah, I was...
All right.
Yeah, look, thank you everybody for being engaged and coming out here and asking great questions. Since the Rivara project came up, I just want to say, why was the childcare the first thing to get cut and not the market rate housing? That's my question. I want to say that democracy needs to be messy, everyone. It needs to be messy. It means when it's messy that all voices are at the table and nothing's getting rubber stamped. And I am, like my colleague Daniel Carlino, and probably a few other folks, are tired of things being rubber stamped. We need more voices, we need more dialogue, we need more time to discuss things. You don't need to be told that you don't understand or that you need to pay attention to the details, because we work for you. You come and tell us what we don't understand and what details we're missing, because that is how it's supposed to go. Representation matters. I believe everybody should have somebody at City Council that they can relate to, regardless of political affiliation, because that's what democracy is about. And I want to see a messy City Council where we're talking about things from more perspectives and compromising.
Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity. I think everything we talked about tonight can be wrapped up in a phrase from a recent book called Homelessness is a Housing Problem by Coburn and Aldrin from the University of Washington. Stable housing is fundamental for mental health treatment and for substance use treatment. So housing is probably the root of many of our problems. Affordability related to that is a housing problem. And that affects all of us. People like me on a fixed income, young people trying to buy their first house, people just trying to make the rent. Skyrocketing property taxes are also a housing problem, because the lack of affordable housing in this town drove up the prices, and it drove up your rents. So that's what I'm going to work on.
All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all so much for being here. Can we get a big round of applause for our candidates? Running for office is not an easy thing. Figuring out public service is not an easy thing. And I'm just so proud that we have not a single empty chair up here on stage, and you all are willing to come and have these I want to just have a few quick reminders. I will just also note that the only city councilor I had to moderate was the one in the audience. A couple quick reminders. You can find out more about these folks on their websites and through talking to them directly. We gave you all that information in your little bag. So we also offered a voter guide that gives a little bit more information in long-form written answers, so I'd encourage you to check that out. There are also an incredible number of additional candidate forums coming up. These guys are working hard for you. Montperk has one on October 9th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Gallagher Business Building, room 123 on campus. The League of Women Voters has one tomorrow night, also October 16th and October 21st, all at the Missoula City Council Chambers, 6:30 to 9. The City Club has a forum on October 14th at the library, 11:15 to 1 p.m. And the Missoula Downtown Association also has a forum on October 14th at the Residence Inn from 4 to 6 p.m. So lots more opportunities to come hear these folks, talk to you about what they're thinking, what they're running for, and chances to ask your own questions. If you're a renter looking for some solidarity or support, I want to encourage you to consider checking out the Missoula Tenants Union. You can find them at MissoulaTenantsUnion.com. If you want to see change in your community and get involved in the work to make that happen, you can check out Catalyst Montana at catalystmt.org. And again, you know, the voters ultimately hold the power to make the change that we want to see happen. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for being a voter. We can't wait to see you around town.